All right, greetings. Welcome back to Black Everything Connected. How's it y'all? Good to see you all. Thanks for hanging out with me every day on Rockfin, YouTube, and on Callin. Here is there's an address on the screen. That's a really good place to donate to the channel. The place to donate to the channel in the description box of all of the platforms that I'm on, and if you appreciate what I do and find value in what I do, please consider donating to the channel. All right. Good to see everyone. Let's get into it. I've actually been trying to avoid or kind of hamp a little of climate news because I've been wanting to cover other things, but there is so much on the subject right now, or surrounding the subject right now, that it's actually almost impossible to get away from, and I get just a pretty steady stream of climate change related and climate change denial related type stuff, that comes my way. So it's actually very hard to avoid. Major Tom on Rockfin says it's a bit warm here. The humidity is on its way to 100%. Nice. As in not very nice. Yeah. We are still experiencing the wall-to-wall 95-degree days here. Although it was kind of nice this morning, it actually cooled off. The nighttime cooled off a little more last night than usual, a little more quickly. So that was actually pleasant. But now the sun is out. It's baking everything. And I can feel kind of sing through the walls already in my studio. All right, let's check this stuff out. So we're just going to go through the many some of the many extreme temperatures, droughts, floods, excuse me, fires, the many extreme weather events. Excuse me. But let's start with this. This is pretty wild. And this is not from Florence. This is from somebody cleared it up. Piombino. What's really bizarre to me is that people are in these. There's like a Ferris wheel going on, and like the fact that it's still running, maybe that's a product of how quickly this came on, but the fact that this thing is still spinning, there's a storm going on, like a pretty major storm, and this thing is still spinning, and I think there's people in this thing. Why? Why wouldn't you shut this down immediately? I kind of don't really understand this. Anyways, destructive winds are rocking parts of Italy and Corsica, with 3 dead this time. This video is from Piombino, where wind gusts are strong enough to move this Ferris wheel, or maybe it's off and the wind is moving the Ferris wheel. Maybe that's what they're saying. I, of course, can't get sound on it. Anyways, it's pretty wild if you can see it, how it's moving. And it looks like one of the cars, or some parts of the cars, or some parts of the being ripped off by the winds. That is some powerful wind. Oh, here's some sound. It's hard to tell what's going on. But I mean, this thing, it looks like it's just being ripped apart by the winds. Pretty stunning footage. Very powerful forces at play. Right? From Christopher Cartwright, talking about there's another heat blob heading towards Europe. Do you want to know the size of the blob? It is 4,000 kilometers. As I said yesterday, I've never seen anything like this. So this looks like a temperature anomaly. I don't know. It doesn't have a date. This is cropped too closely. But he's saying next week. That is fairly massive. Looking like from France through Germany and into Russia. Fairly large blob of heat. And we'll keep going. I think this is from Switzerland, but I can't be sure. But anyways, just here's more flood footage. I can't be sure where this is from, but seems to be a lot of floods going on. From Poppy Davis. A tornado of fire swept everything away in seconds, he told AFP by telephone. Most of those who died were surrounded while visiting a wildlife park. Just one example of the many that climate chaos is here now. 118 degrees. This is, I was just talking about the Algerian fires yesterday, that I saw some footage of this fire just overtaking some people and houses and whatnot. At least 38 people killed as tornado of fire rages in northern Algeria. Hundreds forced to flee homes. And at least 200 injured as firefighters battled string of blazes in El Tarf province. 38 people killed. That is pretty wild. That looks like some fires that are going on elsewhere, right? Does that look like some wildfires that are going on elsewhere? I think it does. I wonder why all these wildfires are happening. Oh, did you guys see that? Maybe you didn't. Just showing the headline in the picture there. Well, we'll get to this one eventually. Destructive winds. And destructive, like just a major storm cell going on in Europe right now, all over Europe. Storms in the Mediterranean today are extremely dangerous. This is from Scott Duncan. Winds over 200 kilometers an hour measured in Corsica from this monster, and we were just looking at some footage from that area. Again, you know, to hearken back to the models that climate scientists put out there decades ago, saying that eventually we're going to hit a point where, you know, things are going to get real hairy. And they kind of predicted everything that we're seeing, right? They're saying what's going to happen? Well, we're going to have extreme weather events. We're going to have crop failures. We're going to have all kinds of stuff going on. Can you guys hear me okay? I actually hear some crackling in my headphones, and I'm wondering if you guys are hearing crackling in the sound. Anybody? Anybody? Or maybe that's just interference from the phone. Sometimes the phone kind of puts some interference into the sound. All right, let's keep going. From Mark Bevis. Dare Bear says, kind of fuzzy, but not bad. All right, thank you. From Mark Bevis, this is what and the actual looks like. Just kind of retweeting this graph here of more than half of all CO2 emissions since 1751 emitted in the last 30 years. That's so we really did a number in the last 30 years. We went whole hog. Again, if there was some kind of evil plot to do something about climate change, we didn't do anything about climate change. Not only did we not do anything about climate change, we did the exact opposite of doing something about climate change. We did the stupid. We did even more. And you could be mad. I think that, you would be rightly mad at the people in charge for not doing anything about it, or for, misinterpreting or miscommunicating the effects of what climate change was going to do. But now, right now, we're seeing the effects globally, worldwide, all the time, without stop. We're seeing the effects kind of play out. And this is now makes it's interesting to me because there seems to be, the climate denial crowd seems to have a lot of momentum, or there seems to be a lot of, vocality, I guess, in that spectrum of the world. Maybe raging against things that are, that you can plainly see with your eye. And that's one of the factors in science is, observing, empirical data, right? Observing things that are happening and putting that in. It's not all models and conjecture and just, we think. There's some concrete, there's a lot of concrete evidence that what has been predicted is now here, and it is happening now. And so it's a little strange to me, when people are saying, well, the models are all wrong. I'm like, well, okay. So do the all wrong models, do your models or your version of reality, does that disprove the Arctic is melting? Does that disprove the seas are rising? Does that disprove the low river levels and the droughts that are going on? Does that disprove the floods and the, insane 500,000 year floods that are happening all the time? I want to know, because it seems like obviously something is happening. You can observe for yourself that something is, things are amiss, things are off. Where did the insects go? Where are birds gone? Where are all the wild animals? They seem to be going away, right? And so, it seems a little strange to me to be talking about models in this day and age. But I ran across this today and I was like, what the heck? Where is it? Somewhere in here. I know where it is. All right, so somebody is trying to, and I actually meant to look something up before I started this video, but that's okay. Maybe I can do it live. I saw this on Twitter and I was like, oh my God. First we have the Great Barrington Declaration. You all know what the Great Barrington Declaration was. It was actually a declaration, and this is what I wanted to actually look up. Well, I'll show you the tweet here first. Here. The Great Barrington Declaration was a group of doctors who were against the like lockdown COVID policies, right? And basically, what it said was, well, I'll get into this, that we should take care of the vulnerable, and that the lockdown policies were going to be, bad. So with that, basically, as infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies, and recommend an approach we called focused protection. So these are infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists. And this was, a bunch of doctors signed on to this. Well, what we have, this was signed on October 4th, that's my birthday, 2020. So you had pretty esteemed doctors and public health scientists and medical practitioners, like lots and lots of doctors, saying we don't think this is, the way that this is being handled is good. And the Great Barrington Declaration actually turned out to be, they had something on the ball there, right? They were correct in their assessments. That the lockdowns were harmful and mandates were harmful, and maybe, giving vaccine, untested vaccines to everyone, maybe that's not a good idea either. However, so they're trying this. I saw this on Twitter, and they're like, "Oh, well, they're trying to say, well, see, climate change. We have this." So I'll read this. First, we had the Great Barrington Declaration, and now, challenging the settled scientific consensus about lockdowns. First of all, let me be picky. I don't think anybody called it settled at the time. I think it was just something that they just ran with, right? And it was never really settled from the beginning. There were lots of opposition right from the get-go. So, again, equating COVID to climate change is the wrong idea. It's just not they're not the same things. But they're trying to do this. They're trying to equate everything that happens with climate change as being exactly like COVID. And that's not necessarily correct. Now comes the World Climate Declaration, challenging the computer models predicting environmental catastrophe. Well, I think that's all you need to do is read that sentence, because we're past computer models now. This assumes, and well, we're going to go into this a little bit. This assumes that climate change is theoretical, that it's still theoretical. Hold on. Anyways, James Darling says they checked the climate models by comparing their results to historical observed climate record. Yes. Yes, thank you, Dara Bear. A much more targeted, specific, and effectual approach that would have saved lives. Right. The Great Barrington Declaration. But climate change is not COVID on any level, right? It's just that, there's a lot of data and evidence around COVID being, the origins of COVID being something that people are discussing, and it also was something that just came out of the blue, a couple years ago. So it's like, and it does look like scientists for many years have been trying to, promote this idea that we're going to have a pandemic and it's going to be horrible. And here it is, but it was kind of like the pandemic that wasn't right now, I actually predicted this at the beginning of COVID, and lots of other people did too, right? So other people did this as well. In the beginning of COVID, they were like, I was like, in a couple of years, you're going to have a whole bunch of papers and scientists, and they're going to be like, oh yeah, we kind of messed that one up, and there's going to be a whole lot of dissection of what really went on, and it's happening now, right? That dissection is happening in real time. But they're trying to kind of, piggyback that thing onto climate change, and it's just not the same thing. This is extremely, even by the language of this, is extremely like propagandized, because the political fiction that humans cause or most or all climate change claim that science behind the notion is settled has been dealt a savage blow. Oh my God! By the World Climate Declaration signed by hundreds of professionals. There's no climate emergency. So these are scientists and professionals. We'll kind of pick through who some of these people are. It's kind of like, remember when a bunch of people signed a letter saying they didn't like Bernie Sanders, they weren't going to support Bernie Sanders in the primary in 2020, and then they went through and looked at all the people, and they were like, who are these people? Are these people even affiliated with, whatever? Should we be even listening to these people? Anyways, let me see. I got chart here. Blah blah blah. They're saying again, they're basing all of this on models, really. So they're take the cherry pick, like theoretical. Theoretically, we disagree with climate change. So here's our graphs and our models. Because I don't want to spend too much time on this, I'm just going to try and quickly go through this. Anyways, we're opposed to the settled climate science, blah blah blah. They don't, particular ire is reserved for climate models. They believe the outcome of the climate models is to believe what the model makers have put in. Okay, so climate models are now central to today's climate discussion. Not really, and scientists see this as a problem. Okay, so they're off. I'm just going to immediately say they don't know what they're talking about, because there's actually real world observable events that are happening that coincide with climate change. And so you're off there. But I'm sure, I'm absolutely positive that the alternative journalism, many in the alternative journalism crowd will run, screaming down the street with this, see, look at all these people. Oh, quickly. I really don't want to spend too much time on this, but we'll look at this declaration that's signed, blah, blah, blah. There's no climate emergency. That's what they say. Looks like professors and people, right? Who are these people? Are they doctors? There's some doctors in here. The Viscount Monckton. Lord Monckton is in this list. Good God, guys. Lord Monckton is a professional climate denier. He is on this list. So you guys are really... it's like some doctors, some professors, and then some just people, right? Some folks that are like, we don't believe it's true. Lord Monckton, the famous climate denier, is on this. And then we have, the list of people is like Jeremy Barlow, energy and mining professional, really? So, smart Stuart Ballantine is a ship designer and at a sea transport company. Okay. Okay. All right. Yosef Bala was a retired teacher and manager of a small business. So these people look like really, all these people very, high level, right? This is not the same as the Barrington Declaration, which all of those people were very high level. They were all doctors, virologists, and high level public health officials. This is just like, some people. Some people here have some. Looks like they have some knowledge of some things, I guess. Author Day, specialist in geochemical modeling, volcanic processes. Okay. David Denham, lifetime experiences as architect, active in giving talks and writing opinion articles on climate change. All righty. Okay, so it's just your list of people here is a little bit, there's another guy that's a retired neuropsychologist. All right, all right. You found a bunch of people that don't believe in climate change. I'm sorry, I'm not showing you guys the list on the screen. I'm showing you now. Anyways, all of this is to say, the models, they're talking about models. And, now we have, right now, in reality, in real time, we have just, massive shifts in the weather, massive shifts in climate, right? People are experiencing difficulty in growing food and growing crops. There is an observable shift in climate. Like, climate is changing. It is absolutely changing. It's changing in real time, and you can observe it, and people talk about it all the time, right? The cherry trees in D.C. blossom, a month ahead of schedule or 2 months ahead of schedule now. People report, difficulties growing food now, right? Because the climate is all over the place. It keeps shifting. It goes from hot and cold, cold and hot. It's too wet or it's too dry. I personally observe, the effects of climate change all the time. There's a lack of insects. People say that all the time. There are trees in my city that are like losing all their leaves from the top down. That wasn't a thing, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. That wasn't happening. It's happening now, right? We're losing trees, and we're losing trees from the top down in my city. I can walk around and I did that years ago, taking pictures of the trees that are burning from the top down. So there's observable effects of climate change happening. Low rivers and reservoirs. It's just. So you're going to deny all this. Glaciers are melting. You're going to deny all of this observable evidence to go. We don't agree with the models. You're way off. You don't have anything. And what are you even talking about? What are you even talking about? You're talking about nothing, and you don't know what you're talking about. Oh my God. Anyways, it's annoying. Here's a guy, well, the guy that wrote that article, his name is, I think, Chris Morrison. Chris Morrison. Here's somebody refuting Chris Morrison and, letting you know, this is recent too. This is from May 19th, 2022. Warming of Earth's surface and oceans continues apace, contrary to claims and blog. Global warming started to run out of steam over 2 decades ago. This is over 2 decades ago, half of the apparent global temperature increase from January 1910 to January 2000 is due to administrative adjustments. That's another one. Anyways, so he says, incorrect. Continuous warming of Earth's surface and oceans has been measured since the 1960s by multiple independent and peer-reviewed data sets. All of the, and here's the thing: is like people like to use peer-reviewed studies when it helps their case. When it doesn't help their case, they're like, peer review is stupid, right? Pay attention to people when they say stuff like that. All the available evidence indicates that global warming has not stopped. with 2016 and 2020 being the warmest years on record. Ocean heat content data also indicate an increase from 1998 to 2012. Misleading adjustments to the NASA GISS surface temperature dataset are made to accommodate new stations and updated algorithms. When adjusted annual temperature data from NASA GISS are compared against raw temperature data, the adjusted dataset actually diminishes the warming trend from 1940 to the present. So what they're saying is, so his argument is that the adjustments are what's making it seem like it's getting warmer, and he's saying no, actually the adjustments make it not as warm as the raw data sets indicate. So it's actually the raw data sets are indicating that it's much warmer, or it's, you know, and you adjust them, they've adjusted down. In a recent article in Daily Skeptic, which I just was reading from, a website with a history of publishing scientifically unfounded claims, Chris Morrison repeats a common claim in contrarian circles that global warming has slowed dramatically since 1998. Morrison, who presents himself as a former financial journalist, further goes on to downplay. That's the other thing too, is this guy is his, you know, I don't know, whatever. You know, sure, people can have a background or, you know, do their own research on science. Not saying that you have to have a degree in something, but this guy's a former financial journalist and now is an expert on climate change. Anyways, further goes on to downplay past warming, claiming that half of the apparent global temperature increase from January 1910 to January 2000, blah, blah, blah. All right. Same thing. We just talked about that. So this is the data sets, right? Adjusted and raw data. I don't know what this bottom one is, but this is a better graph to look at. So this is the raw data showing warming here, and this is the adjusted data. So it actually, the adjusted data shows less warming, kind of until we get here, until the last couple of years, where the raw data and the adjusted data get a little tighter. So anyways, it's cherry picked. So he goes on to say this is just cherry picked data. There's a lot of noise in the monthly data, and this particular comparison is just the latest adjustment he could find. If he had looked at January 1881, the adjustments reduced the difference to January 2000 by about 0.1 C. So they took, you know, one particular cherry-picked source of information and they made it seem like that was everything, which is not how it works. Morrison's evidence seems to be his own eyeball estimate of warming for a small part of the Earth, the air 9 kilometers up in the northern hemisphere, between 20 and 70 north, which is not global. Compared to the actual global temperature, this would be missing the strong warming we have recently seen in the Arctic. Anyways, I'll leave it at that, because I don't want to spend way too much time on this. But this is like the Tony Heller graph that I showed, which was like a cherry-picked part of Greenland. It didn't represent all of Greenland. It didn't represent all of time in Greenland. It was just... Anyways, just to sum it up, this whole supposed, you know, Great Barrington Declaration against the climate change is talking about models and not even talking about observed. You know, they're leaving out a lot of information in this. And yes, if you put your own data into the models, if you put your own data set in the models, you can make anything. All right, so guys, YouTubers, I'm gonna jump off. Thank you so much for hanging out on YouTube with me. Sorry, callers, a moment. I'll take some calls in a few moments, but I need to cover some more stories before it gets too late in the day. So YouTube, thank you so much for hanging out. You can follow the rest of the show on Rockfin, and see you tomorrow.